Welcome back to In Alignment with T. For those of you who've been here all along, and for all the new followers and subscribers, I'm more than grateful that you've chosen to join us. On today's episode, we will be talking about why it shouldn't take you so long to move on from that relationship. Now, in the past year or so, I've had several conversations that have led me to want to flesh out this particular topic on the podcast. It's been brought to my attention that my take on how you should handle the termination of a relationship and moving on from that relationship is a bit intolerant or harsh. And I think that's wrong. But for the purposes of this video, I'd like to make it very clear that when I say move on, I don't mean moving on to another person. I mean just moving on with your life and understanding and accepting that that relationship is in fact over. I've got a lot of flack for not fighting for relationships or being too quick to sever ties. And this is even with friendships too. I think when I ask those questions to better understand you so I can coexist with you better, that's fighting for the relationship. When I raise issues to you so that we can fix them, that's me wanting to keep that person in my life. When I tell you the truth, even if it might be a bit difficult to hear, that's a form of love. Honesty is a form of love. Would you rather be lied to? Right? Because some people would rather be lied to, but it's not really my thing. I think honesty is a form of love. So I just do it really differently. I think what I do is that I fight for relationships while they're still in motion. And I think the people who tend to think that I'm a bit more harsh are the people who tend to recognize the value of their relationships or their friendships once that train has come to a halt. Because I think people with that kind of thinking only have the tools to attain and the energy to graft things in that moment, but they don't know how to keep and maintain them. And I think that's what tends to cause the problem, and then they end up crying over spilt milk. If only you had listened. And this is because the same type of person that would miss all these things that I just mentioned is the same type of person that when they do choose to see you, they would choose to view you from a distorted lens. They will see your boundaries as roadblocks, rather than a sign that you know yourself so well and that you're capable of communicating what does and doesn't work for you, and that might be good for the relationship. Like when you get hired for a job, one of the things that they're looking for is knowledge and good communication skills, because it shows that you would be capable of bringing value and also being able to work well with a team. A relationship or a friendship is more effective or most efficient, rather, with teamwork. So if you find someone who knows their values, knows their standards, knows their boundaries, who is capable of communicating that to you, shouldn't you take a page from their book to learn from them so that you can identify your boundaries and your values and you can communicate that with them, so that you guys can come together and build a relationship that works and functions? People like that will see your choice to disengage from the game of maybe hot and cold as disinterest, rather than the fact that you're mature enough to choose peace, and that you know that true love doesn't come with games. In these types of circumstances, you don't walk away through a lack of love. You walk away because another person's inability to evolve is simply not your responsibility. And that it's better to walk away before you become a tyrant. Now, what is a tyrant? A tyrant in a relationship, a lot of the time in this particular context, is usually a woman. Many of us have done it. You might meet someone, you get to know them, you start to like them. You realize that they don't meet your requirements for a partner, but you understand that maybe you can work on things. So you start to make requests of them, start to let them know what you would require, or maybe you would like them to change a couple of things, or maybe you'd like them to do things like they used to. And you spend a lot of time telling them and nagging, complaining. And it's not completely your fault, because the other person is also responsible for the fact that they're probably making promises about how they're going to improve and how they're going to start doing things the right way. So, it's a joint effort. It takes two to tango. But what tends to happen is, over time, the other person either starts to feel like they're not good enough for you, or like they can't meet your requirements, they can't meet your needs. But on your side, you're like, you're constantly making these promises, but you're not doing what you say you will. So it becomes quite a serious issue in the relationship, this not changing certain problems, certain issues. And it can take a while, but it can cause quite a rift, because then they feel like they can't live up to what you want, and you feel like your needs are not getting met. And over time, that can build resentment and dislike. And then the relationship ends up not working, or they stay in it, they're not happy while they're in it. So I think it's really important that you just sometimes learn to walk away, instead of becoming a tired, bitter person with a partner that now feels inadequate or insecure and then blames you for making them feel that way. So as much as some people would consider my take on this quite harsh, it has its purpose. It really avoids that long-term bitterness from the partner who's not getting their needs met, and also that knock in self-esteem, right? And the build-up of possible hatred from the person who's constantly having to hear you complain about their behavior or what they're not doing right. It's like, maybe you're just not well suited, and maybe you are incompatible. And that leads me to start off with the number one reason why it shouldn't be so hard. Did you try? Now, what I mean by this is, usually when people start off relationships, they don't tend to have the right conversations in the beginning. Start dating, you start to get along, you really like the person, so you enjoy those earlier moments. You start to have more serious conversations later on, in the relationship. What I would like to suggest is that you have all the serious conversations in the beginning, and you determine what does and doesn't work for you really, really early on, so that you can enjoy the rest of the relationship. Because if you've determined what works and what doesn't work, it makes the rest of the relationship easier, right? It's like, for instance, there are people who even go all the way to getting married, and then maybe 2 years into the marriage, after they've enjoyed themselves, gone through their honeymoon, had their fun, they're now debating having children. And it's like, why haven't you had that conversation earlier, right? When you guys were getting to know one another, you never discussed kids. You never discussed where you wanted to live. You didn't discuss that you wouldn't want to move, or that it was a non-negotiable for you, long before love comes into the picture, so that you can avoid having these bigger issues down the line when you're more emotionally invested. Put those out of the way to avoid later issues. So let's say you didn't have all the important conversations in the beginning. You didn't have conversations about kids, where you'd live, faith, how you'd like to spend your time, but you really do like this person and you want to see if you could make it work. So you start to communicate with them, you start to let them know what your requirements are, what you would prefer, how you would like to handle things moving forward. And if you're lucky, you get the appropriate type of person for you, and they do the needful and everything works well and everything flows. But if you find someone who comes with a bit of resistance, you could wait and see if things will work. You can wait and see if they're willing to utilize, their adult communication skills and, do the right thing, or if they are a bit too stubborn. You wait and see if they're willing to take these things on. But if they're too resistant, it's taking too long, you give it some time. It could be a few months, it could be a year if you're really patient. Different people are capable of handling and taking on different things, so I can't determine that for you, only you can make that decision. But let's say a few months have gone by and you've not seen any improvement. They're not taking on the changes, they're not making any changes, they're not communicating properly, they're not letting you know what you need to know so that you can both work on the relationship for both of you. Then you're left with two decisions. You can either accept them for who they are, or you can walk away. Now, When you accept them for who they are, that means you cannot move on with complaining and nagging, but you have to move on with the relationship as is. But we've already spoken about being a tyrant, so clearly that's not an option, where you stick around and you nag them and complain the whole time. It's going to build bitterness, it's going to build resentment. And I wouldn't blame you if you choose to walk away, considering the fact that your needs are not being met and you can see that you are not being heard. Because the honest truth is, we've all cared about people. We've all loved someone. And we all can understand that when you care about someone or you care about something, you put in the effort, right? You want to do your best. You want to see that it's going to work. So if the person is complacent, they don't want to hear you, and you communicated this in the most respectful ways that you can, then I wouldn't fault you for walking away. You're doing what's best for you. Because I don't know who, there's a saying, and I don't know who it comes from. So if anyone knows who it comes from, please put it down in the comments if you can. And it's that, look at your partner today. And if they never changed, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, would you be happy? And I know that's not the truth for most people. I know that does not ring true for most people. They want some kind of change, right? And it's fine to want some kind of change so long as you're with someone who's willing to take those steps with you. But if you're not with someone who's willing to take those steps with you, would you be happy in the near future? And that's why I like to look ahead in relationships. It's like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, would I be happy in this? And you look at your future and you look at your life and you look at yourself and you have to make a decision for you. No one else can make that decision. So long as you have tried, you've tried to communicate, you've tried to give them the tools, you've tried to do the right thing, and it's still not working and they're still not budging, I wouldn't fault you. So then we have to move on to the next thing, which is that there is no one measure of love that means more than how you are chosen. And I'd like to be very specific about what I mean on treating. Now, I'm Nigerian, right? And we like the soft life. But what most people don't understand is that they like to conflate money and material things for being treated properly. There's another side to the soft life that encompasses how gently you are handled, right? Does this person open doors, right? Are they kind? Are they the type of person that would bring you breakfast in bed, or just something as simple as get you a cup of water when you are in bed or when you're sitting down? Would they rub your feet? Do they give you forehead kisses? Do they get you flowers? Those types of little gestures of love, if that's what you would like, right? Because there are instances where people will talk about soft life, but it comes with a bout of domestic violence, or it comes with being called out of your name. It's very important that we don't conflate those things, right? There are instances where you can have both, where you're being treated to a bunch of nice material things, but you're also being treated very kindly and you're handled with a lot of gentleness. I think it's really important that we put that out there, that if you were sold a lie that soft life is just about the material things, it's really not. It's also about the respect that you receive and how gently you are handled. So I think it's really important. So if you are in a relationship where you would want a partner who is more gentle and more soft and more romantic in the way that they treat you, not just when it comes to material things, but with the emotional and the mental side of the relationship, there's nothing wrong with you requiring that. And I think it's important that you communicate that with your partner and you see if they are capable of bringing that to the table, and where they are not, again, I wouldn't fault you for walking away, because as human beings, we have mental and emotional needs. Our needs are not solely dependent on survival, and our needs are beyond the material, right? It's beyond having a roof over your head and a bunch of Chanel bags in your closet. You want kindness, you want conversation, you want to be able to relate with the person that you're with, and it's okay if you want that. And it's also okay if you don't, right? Both options are available. But I wouldn't fault you if you had communicated that on several occasions, and in the event that you didn't receive it, you decided to walk away. And most people would tell you you were crazy. Most people would look at you like you are arrogant or ungrateful for walking away from someone who was willing to give you a very comfortable life simply because your emotional needs weren't being met. But if that's what you want and those are the standards that you set, there's absolutely nothing wrong. Are you still watching? Well, if you've enjoyed this episode up until this point, I'd like to ask you for a tiny favor that will only take a few seconds of your time. This is a really small channel, and part of my mission is to get these conversations out there to get the exposure that they need. So please kindly subscribe through the thumbnail in the bottom right corner of this video, and please find the links to listen to the full episode on both Apple and Spotify podcasts. And follow us on the links that are in the description below to our Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. Thank you so much. Now let's continue. So then we go on to talk about the fact that all roads lead to self-esteem. You only tolerate what you think you deserve. If you stay in an environment long enough, you will believe what it tells you about yourself, right? So if you're in an environment where you are upheld and you are loved and you are valued, you'll feel good. And if you're in an environment where you are treated as though you are not worthy of certain things, you will also believe that over time. So it's really important for you to have a high self-esteem or work on your self-esteem, especially in the course of a relationship, so that you are capable of identifying what does and doesn't work for you and when you are and aren't being treated appropriately. The previous episode of In Alignment with T, which is episode 5, is a 35-minute episode that is a deep dive on self-esteem. So if you are in a place where you are interested in building your self-esteem, or you would like a few tips on self-esteem, you can go onto the In Alignment with T YouTube homepage and click on the video, or you can go on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to listen to the audio. Self-esteem is a very, very important factor when it comes to relationships, more so than people would like to believe that it is. So say, for example, you're in a relationship. Going back to, if you stay in an environment for long enough, you will start to believe what it tells you about what you deserve. Say, for example, you're in a relationship with someone and you would want to spend more time with them intimately, and they aren't making the time, right? And you've waited it out and you've complained about this, or you've brought it up to them 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, a year, and they still don't make the time for you. They don't sit there and have conversations with you. They don't relate to you. They don't take an interest in the stuff that you like and the stuff that you're interested in. They don't engage in the conversations that you like. Over time, you'll start to believe that you don't deserve an attentive partner, or you'll start to gaslight yourself into believing that you might be asking for too much. Or you might say that maybe relationships don't require that, and I think that's absolutely insane. What is the point of choosing a partner for life if you can't play with them and joke with them and enjoy their company? You might as well be living with a rock, or you might as well just have friendships. What's the point of a whole marriage and choosing a life partner if you can't do partner-like things with them? So no, you are deserving of way more. You're deserving of an attentive partner that is attentive to your emotional and mental needs, amongst other needs. And if that's what you require, there's nothing wrong with you asking for those things. Don't ever think that you are deserving of any less. You set the tone for what you want in your relationships. And so long as you want it, you can ask for it. I don't think anything is ever too much. There's always someone that's willing, and whoever it is that's not willing, depending on how it makes you feel, you can make the decision as to whether or not it's something that you want. The world does not determine what you want. It's kind of like a career, right? If let's say the world told you that you were only worthy of being a cleaner, and you decided that, no, I'm going to start my own company from the ground up, and you start your company from the ground up and you succeed, then suddenly everybody's mute. Suddenly no one has anything to say, and they're all kissing your ass because you did it on your own. But back in the day when you were saying you were going to build a company on your own, people were saying all you're good enough for is becoming a cleaner, or all you're good enough for is, cleaning floors, or whatever it is. You catch the drift, right? So I think there's no such thing as asking for too much. There are only people who are willing and aren't willing to give you what you want. So don't stay in environments where, and I think these topics that I'm even bringing up are neglectful. We could even go on to talk about people who are in relationships where there's domestic violence going on, or where they're being called out of their name, or where their partner, is speaking to other people or engaging in relationships with other people, and they think that they should be grateful because their partner provides for them or something like that, and they shouldn't really ask for much more. And it's like, no, actually, there's nothing wrong with you wanting your partner to yourself, especially if you both promise monogamy to one another. There is nothing wrong with you wanting a partner that treats you with kindness and softness and gentleness instead of aggression and violence. There's nothing wrong with that. So stop letting the world make you believe that you're not deserving of that, or that you are deserving of less, or that you shouldn't be asking for too much. Because if you allow yourself to remain in that environment while trying to believe these things or forcing yourself to believe these things, you will start to accept it as part of yourself, and you'll start to think that you are not worthy of more. So it's really, really, really important for you to step out of that. Work on your self-esteem, build your self-esteem. You are worthy of love. You're worthy of everything, okay? You just need to work towards those things. And remember, if you are not being treated properly, it's always okay for you to walk away. So I'd like to move on to something that many of us fail to understand, which is that people only change for themselves. People won't change for you. It doesn't even make any sense to require them to. Think about your whole life, whether it's your friendships, your relationship with God, your workplace, your purpose. You only really do what you want to do, and you only really do what serves you. What I want you to think about in terms of your relationship is, if you're constantly trying to communicate something to someone and they're not doing it, it might just be because they don't see any value in actually doing what you're asking them of. Then that should also lead you to think about the value they see in you and the value they see in the relationship itself, right? Because it's like, if they're not doing what is required of them, they're not doing what is required to build and uphold the relationship, and maybe it's because they don't see any value. They might not see the return on investment. And then that would be up to you to decide whether or not this is what you think you want to deal with for life. Again, look at your life 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. Right? Do you see yourself happy? Do you see yourself content in this particular scenario or in this particular relationship as it is? Or do you see yourself as resentful and bitter because you spent so many years waiting for someone to change, waiting for someone to prove your value to you through how they treat you, through how they accept you, through what they're willing to change? But I think what we've not looked at all in this episode is that in all of this, right, in you trying, right, in you being able to differentiate between what it means to be treated well when it comes to material things, or the way that a person engages with you and handles you, or if you're looking at how your self-esteem is built up or not in that relationship, or if you're even looking right now about them changing certain things because you keep trying to change them in expectation that they'll do that for you, what does that say about how they actually feel? Right? If you've tried everything you possibly could, you might have to accept that they just don't see that value, and that even if they might, they don't think it's worth the work. So what are you staying for? And sometimes it's not even about them not seeing the value or not thinking that they should put in the work. Sometimes this is also a case of capacity. But again, it's up to you. Even if the person doesn't have malicious intent behind their choices, right? Is it your responsibility to sit there and wait till they have the capacity or till they're willing? Are you willing to waste your life? Or are you going to get up and make a decision and be like, well, I care. I would have wanted this to work. I would have loved this to work, but you're not going to change for me. You're only going to change for yourself. And if you don't see anything wrong with the way that you're handling this, or in the way that you're carrying out, or in how you're doing things in this relationship, then it's okay for me to walk away, to dip, and go where I will feel fulfilled, or where I will be happy, right? Because I think that's fair. And this is for everyone, you know. I think it's important to wait, to be patient with people. But in the event that, again, you're not happy and they're not listening and they're not being there for you, it's pretty okay for you to leave. They're not going to change for you. And even if they change for you, it's fickle. It won't last. It won't stand the test of time because it's not what they wanted. They're doing it for you. You want somebody who wants to respect you, or wants to love you, or wants to be there for you, or wants to work on things because they want it, not because you forced it on them. It goes back to not being a tyrant. Don't waste your life and don't waste your time in a bitter fight. To force a grown adult to do what you want them to do. It's better when it comes from the heart. It feels good when it comes with intent, when it doesn't feel forced. Right? You don't have to ask for respect. You don't have to ask for flowers. You don't have to ask for basic things, basic relationship baseline requirements. It feels way better when you don't have to do that. Why you shouldn't really be stuck. And now I'd like to move on to divine intervention, which is the final thing I'm going to discuss in this episode. Rejection is protection. And when I say rejection, it's not even like in a I don't like you kind of way. It's just that rejection in the sense that either the world, God, the universe, rejecting that relationship for you is a form of protection. It's deterring you from something that isn't meant for you, from something that isn't good for you. Right? It's kind of like that saying, whenever God took something away from me, he always replaced it with something better. And it's true. Sometimes, like, not all relationships are meant to lead to marriage, and not all marriages are meant to be till death do us part. Some people come into your life to teach you lessons so that when you are blessed with what you prayed for, you're capable of appreciating it better. You're capable of appreciating it the way you should. You're capable of handling it with the care that you should handle it with. It's kind of like how when you don't know how bad something can be or how bad something is, you're not going to appreciate a blessing when you see it. Right? So the way that I like to look at it is, when a relationship ends, I like to look at it as a form of divine protection or divine intervention. It was meant to end, it's perfectly fine. And the reason why I know it's meant to end is because you've tried. You've communicated, it didn't work. You've tried, it didn't work. You know, and maybe it has a lot to do with maybe their maturity, their journey, what they need to do, what's meant for them. But I don't believe in holding on to things that are not working. Because when things aren't working, it's also a sign that you're meant to move on to better things. It's kind of like careers, right? Let's say you went to school to become an engineer, you've gone to different firms. It doesn't seem like you're growing. You don't feel like you're living within your purpose. You know, you don't feel like your skills are being utilized in that environment. And maybe you always had a passion for being a painter, and you go into that passion and you kill it, right? And your paintings do really well and you become a renowned artist. Who knows? Sometimes you won't know how blessed you will become in a certain area of your life until you walk away from what you're holding on to. Or sometimes it's God's redirection when things aren't working, and that's perfectly okay. I don't hold on to things that I've let go of. I project years ahead. And I look at my current circumstances now, and I think, nothing about this changes. Will I be happy, or will I be resentful? And that's just about enough for me. All in all, it shouldn't be so difficult to move on from that relationship that simply isn't working, especially when you have communicated your needs, when you have recognized how you would like to be treated, and you don't see any improvement in that area. If it's not the right environment for your self-esteem, if you see that they have no intention of changing, especially if it happens that you have to force that change. And finally, that it might just be divine intervention, and God might just be redirecting you to bigger and better things. And before I wrap up this episode, I would like to leave you with a few words. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. And when I let go of what I have, I receive what I need. This has been episode 6 of the In Alignment with T show. Are you still watching? Well, if you've enjoyed this episode up until this point, I'd like to ask you for a tiny favor that will only take a few seconds of your time. This is a really small channel, and part of my mission is to get these conversations out there to get the exposure that they need. So please kindly subscribe through the thumbnail in the bottom right corner of this video, and please find the links to listen to the full episode on both Apple and Spotify podcasts. And follow us on the links that are in the description below to our Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video.